Let me ask you a question. Is Jadeveon Clowney a bust? Now, you might have a strong reaction to that question, but I think it's a fair one to ask because what is the definition of a bust? According to the NFL Draft's Wikipedia, a draft bust occurs when a highly touted or highly selected draftee does not meet expectations. This can be for a variety of reasons, but most often noted are injury or inability to perform at a professional level. A player is also regarded as a larger bust if more successful players are drafted after him or her. Now again, after that definition, is Jadeveon Clowney a bust? Well, let's jump back into the 2014 draft to find out. Now, in any other year, this would be a harder question to answer, but the 2014 draft is a different animal, as it was one of the best drafts of this decade. Now, Jadeveon was the undoubted, unquestioned consensus #1 pick of that draft for many good reasons at the time. I mean, until this point, we had not really seen somebody like Jadeveon Clowney. You have to remember, he was 6'5", 270, and ran a 4.5 40, which even with today's standards is ridiculous. And he jumped as high as Dwayne Wade. Also, another thing that helped his draft stock was that a year before he was drafted, he killed a man on the field. RIP dude from Michigan. And from that moment on, he was crowned as #1 because that play was played over and over. It was never able to escape our conscience. It was never able to escape our mind when we thought of Jadeveon. So every time we thought of Jadeveon, the context was the dude who made that hit. And to be fair to the Texans, at the time, nobody questioned that pick. That was the obvious thing to do, was select Jadeveon Clowney with the #1 pick. People thought it would be a done deal. Him and J.J. Watt would terrorize any offensive line they got in front of. But now, today, I can say with 100% certainty that that was the wrong choice. Now, that doesn't mean Jadeveon Clowney isn't a good player, but because there are not only several players you would want in that draft now more than Clowney, but there are also several pass rushers who you would not only take ahead of Clowney, but who are just better than Clowney. And that's not Jadeveon's fault, but if a draft bust is somebody who underperformed, since that term is so relative to what draft you are in, it's important what players who play your position do after you get selected. And to secure that point, I'm gonna read you off a list of names, specifically pass rushers, and you tell me if you would rather have them than Jadeveon Clowney. Khalil Mack, Aaron Donald, DeMarcus Lawrence. Of that group of three, one of them are as at least productive as Clowney and DeMarcus Lawrence, and the other two are in a completely different league than Clowney, and it would be unfair to expect Clowney to be at that level if he wasn't drafted ahead of those dudes. And that's where we start to get to the truth about Jadeveon Clowney. The truth is, Jadeveon Clowney is a bust. He is the 4th best pass rusher in his draft class. He was picked ahead of 2 of this generation's best pass rushers, and still while he has improved, still while his play is greater than his numbers may indicate, he is still yet to become a double-digit sack guy. A feat that Khalil Mack has done multiple times, Aaron Donald has done multiple times, and even DeMarcus Lawrence has done multiple times. Jadeveon has underplayed his own expectations, and he has been outplayed by other pass rushers. And I think that is what played into Houston being so reluctant to keep him long term, and the general resentment between the coaching staff and Jadeveon Clowney. Because I believe every time Bill O'Brien looked at Jadeveon Clowney, he probably thought to himself, man, what if they drafted Khalil Mack or Aaron Donald like I would have? Because coaches are always the smartest people in the room. When you look at somebody like that in any relationship, it's not going to be healthy. If you have a girlfriend and every time you look at her, you think of her best friend, then you got problems coming ahead, right? That was kind of Colin Cowardish. Oh my God, I'm becoming who I hate. Hype is weird and it's kind of like fashion. Something can be cool one week, a joke the next, and then come back to being cool a month later. And this is what's happened to Clowney. As far as hype goes, Jadeveon Clowney was kind of the Zion Williamson of the NFL. He had all that hype coming in, then he got hurt and disappointed for a couple of years and put up less than average sack numbers and kind of became a joke for a while. Even though that was unfair because he was still a very, very effective run defender. Now let's flip to today because he's available, because people are more willing to appreciate what he brings to the table, and they remember it's Jadeveon Clowney, the dude who killed a man against Michigan. They start to bring the hype back and talk about Jadeveon Clowney in ways that aren't fair to Jadeveon Clowney, as they kind of resurrect this hype that he had coming from college. Now the skills that he had, the run defending, the solid pass rushing, the effect that he has on the game, go from underappreciated to overhyped. People are starting to talk about Jadeveon's impact on the Seattle Seahawks as if he's gonna make this Khalil Mack size difference, when that's not who this dude is. That's not what we should ever expect of him, and that is 100% okay for it to be the case. Clowney is a good player, but he's not going to change your defense. He doesn't put you over the top. He is not a top 10 pass rusher in this league. He's at his best when he's a second option, an elite number 2 to have alongside a great pass rusher, and that is okay. But please, please, do not burden this man with all of the hype that he had to leave behind in Houston and when he was in college in Seattle. We were all wrong about Jadeveon Clowney the first time around. Well, not all of us. I was kind of right. Yes, that is a draft board I made in 2014 before the draft when I was in college because I had fun in college. But while most of us were wrong, while Clowney is definitely and technically a draft bust, this doesn't mean that he's a waste or a bum. It just means that he wasn't the right choice at number 1 overall. If Clowney was taken in the later part of the first round, I promise you, he would have had no problem getting the extension that he wanted from the Houston Texans, because he wouldn't be looked at by the Texans organization as this giant missed opportunity. They would be able to appreciate more what he brings to the table and compensate him for that. So to me, honestly, for both parties, it's good that they moved on. For the Texans, they get to move on from Clowney. They get to find comparable pass rushing at a lower price. And they could stop thinking about Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack every time they look at Clowney. And for Clowney, he finally gets to escape the expectations of being better than Aaron Donald or being better than Khalil Mack. He finally gets to escape the expectations that he had coming into the draft. He finally gets to escape the expectations of, quite frankly, being the number 1 pick of a draft by the Houston Texans. When those expectations are coming from within the organization and the people who drafted you and your head coach of being that number 1 overall pick, and guys like Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald emerged that weren't the number 1 overall pick, then it becomes hard for Clowney to be able to do what he does and become appreciated, because he's always going to be looked at in the shadow of Aaron Donald by the Texans, in the shadow of Khalil Mack by Bill O'Brien. And that was the uphill battle that Clowney had. And now, being in Seattle, Clowney finally gets to get a fresh start. He finally gets to escape having to live up to being the number 1 overall pick in a draft that had 2 Hall of Fame pass rushers. Clowney gets to be appreciated for what he brings to the table, for what he can do, instead of looked at in the shadow of guys who do things better than him. And he finally gets to play in a 4-3, which is the natural fit and the thing he dominated in college. He will probably finally put up double-digit sacks. He will definitely help improve the Seahawks defense. But Houston will still be able to win the South since there is no Andrew Luck in the way. And the only other real competition is a Jaguars team that is depending on Nick Foles, which, yeah, we'll see how that goes. So the truth about Jadeveon Clowney is that he is a disappointment. And a pretty big one at that if you look at who was drafted behind him, specifically the guys that do the same thing that he does. But he's not a terrible player. He just has the misfortune of being drafted in front of 2 future Hall of Famers. But I also think that we need to be able to appreciate what Jadeveon Clowney can do and how good he is as a football player without trying to resurrect this myth of Jadeveon Clowney we created in the lead up to the 2014 draft. But it seems like we just aren't capable of doing that. So until then, the truth about Jadeveon Clowney is that we were all wrong. But we weren't that wrong. But we also just shouldn't expect that much. And that's it for this week's episode of Around the League. Let me know what you think about Jadeveon Clowney. Is he a bust? Is he going to explode this year? Is he finally going to be the Jadeveon we thought he is? Or do you think that dude don't exist like I do? Let me know in the comment section down below. But thank you guys for watching. If you want to support the show, please join my Patreon or buy a shirt. And also, if you like what I do here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload, and I do upload a lot. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.